Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, and I'm the broadcaster with the Lansing Lugnuts. Last year, we did only for our panels, we did only broadcasters. This year, the decision was made that we need decision makers. And to that end, I am honored to say that we are joined by Pete Christopher, the Matsu Miners general manager, Steve Tahsler, the Frontier League's commissioner. John Nolan, who's the broadcasting and media relations manager with the Fort Wayne TinCaps, is here too. I'm expecting Mike Nutter, the team president for the Fort Wayne TinCaps. That way you get all sorts of different perspectives. Summer wooden bat ball, independent ball, minor league baseball, from the perspective of the league. And Steve he was my general manager with the Windy City Thunderbolts. All of these different perspectives to give you that idea of, hey, how do you get your foot in the door? So, with that said, let me introduce our panelists one by one. And John Nolan, let's begin with you. Tell me about your path here to Fort Wayne.
I am originally from Edison, New Jersey. I think I probably can relate to a lot of you in that I had it in mind that I wanted to go into sports broadcasting ever since I was middle school age. Once it dawned on me that I wasn't going to be a professional or even high level collegiate athlete myself. So I had it in mind at that point in time to go on to Syracuse University. Graduated from Syracuse in 2013. While I was a student at Syracuse, there was a guy who was a couple of classes ahead of me who would go on to graduate, and his first full-time job in broadcasting out of college was with the Fort Wayne TinCaps, an affiliate of the San Diego Padres. So to fast forward, when I was graduating from Syracuse in 2013, the TinCaps were hiring for a number two broadcaster, media relations assistant, and an internship role. And so I applied for that, got that opportunity. Didn't have any necessarily better opportunities for the following year in 2014. So I returned to Fort Wayne because I had a really positive experience. And then, wouldn't you know, my predecessor, his name is Mike Cousins. He went on to have a full-time role with ESPN. And I've been here since. So I don't know where a decade has gone by, but continue to get the chance here to work for the Padres High A affiliate.
Pete Christopher, if you don't mind sharing your path.
I was born and raised in Bergen County, New Jersey, across from New York City. I played in high school. I played in the Metropolitan League in Bergen County back in 1970, which was all college kids. I was like one of two high school kids. Invited to tryouts by the Royals and the Pirates. Didn't do as well as I had hoped. Went to work for the phone company. I'm a 30-year IBEW member. I've been general manager of the Matsu Miners for 23 years. I've been in Alaska for 30. So I've had like 220 players for me go on to play professionally, and 25 play in the major leagues. So that's about it.
Thank you, Pete. Steve Tahsler.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am originally from just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. Went to high school and college in the Atlanta area. I went to Georgia State University in the early 1990s. At that point, Georgia State was a commuter school of about 32,000 students in the middle of downtown Atlanta. It was the losingest all-time program in college Division I history. Any school that had been Division I for more than 10 years, Georgia State had the all-time losingest record across everything. It was about as low as you can get in Division I athletics. However, it was still Division I athletics. And the benefit of that is they had no budget, they had no fan base, they had no support. So as an undergraduate, I just walked in one day, volunteered. I had no real background other than having been a fan, and got hired part-time to work men's and women's basketball. About a week later, I got hired to a much higher role to work with baseball and softball as well, and spent 3 years in the sports information department at Georgia State University, which just got me absolutely tremendous experience. Division One, obviously non-conference, we played major opponents, but it was such a small department and such a low-level department. I got to do a lot of work that undergraduates, even graduate students, normally never get to do. And more importantly, I made a lot of connections. And the biggest thing those connections led me to was working in the Olympics. The Olympics obviously were in Atlanta in 1996. Georgia State University was the site for badminton. So everybody from our athletics department was hired to work the badminton portion. About 6 weeks or 8 weeks out, one of the official scorers for baseball had to back out. And now all of a sudden they needed someone who knew baseball on very short notice in Metro Atlanta that could go through a lot of background checks and had to do an FBI background check, had to do criminal background checks. They could get that done. Our baseball coach, without really telling me, put my name in for that. And that got me moved over from working badminton to being one of the official scorers and in the TV production booth for all the Olympic baseball games in 1996. So again, just the power of connections and the power of flukes, walking into the worst ever at that time, the worst ever athletic department in Division One, wound up getting me in the Olympics. After that, I started in the Frontier League. I am starting my 29th season in the Frontier League. I was the general manager of 4 different ball clubs, including the Windy City Club when Jesse worked for us. And then I was the deputy commissioner, moved after that to being the deputy commissioner of the league, and am now the commissioner of the Frontier League. When you start in baseball, especially when you start in the mid-90s, independent baseball, partner league baseball was vastly different than what it is today. So my first year, my salary was $4,000 for the year. And I did anything that was necessary. Obviously, you can't live in a new city on $4,000. I moved from Atlanta to Evansville, Indiana for the job. So for my first 3 years in Evansville, I was the third shift cashier at a Shell gas station in order to make money to be able to survive while I was working to become in baseball. I was the assistant general manager at that point of the Evansville Otters during the day. And from midnight to 8 a.m., I was the third shift cashier at a Shell gas station. And that's what it took for me at that point to stay in baseball. I knew I loved it. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew if I didn't do it when I was in my early 20s, my mid 20s, I was never going to do it. And it has paid off for me and has just moved on. So we have had tremendous success with our broadcasters in the Frontier League. We have numerous guys working major league organizations. Most notably, Jason Benetti got his start with the Windy City team as someone right before Jesse was there. Robert Ford from the Houston Astros got his start in the Frontier League. Aaron Goldsmith with Seattle Mariners got his start with the Frontier League. I know we've got 3 or 4 other guys in the major leagues at different levels right now. Plus, we have an NHL broadcaster, and we have major Division I college broadcasters: Ohio State, University of New Mexico, Power 5 schools. So it's definitely an option. And I'm glad to be on here to provide any background from the hiring insight and how the industry has changed and how it's going to keep changing over the next decades.
Steve, thank you very much. Mike Nutter, the team president for the Fort Wayne TinCaps, what was your path?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jesse. It's an honor to be with you and all these young men on here and women. Grew up in Ohio, born outside of Cleveland, like one of the other people that mentioned that here. Grew up in a big sports family. My brother played 2 sports in college. I did not play any sport in college, but grew up in a big sports family and grew up going to games and things like that. I'm 52 years old. I started in this industry at 18 years old. My dad took a transfer. He moved us from Ohio to San Francisco to Dallas, Texas to Chicagoland. Went to work for the Kane County Cougars at 18, 19 years old out in the suburbs, and haven't stopped and haven't looked back. Getting ready to start my 34th season working in affiliated professional minor league baseball here in another couple of months.
I love it. Thank you. There are a couple of different ways that you can ask questions. Let's keep the chat lively. You can absolutely post questions in the chat. You can also post the symbol to raise your hand, and that way I'll call on you. But we'll start with the very basic question for our panel. And Pete Christopher, I want to start with you. What do you look for in a broadcaster when you hire them?
Well, it's tough because I do everything over the phone. I've had a great success with Syracuse University. Of course, they're one of the best broadcast schools in the country. And a lot of people contact me via email, and I ask for demo tapes, and I go over them. And uh, I've had quite a few guys and girl, like Emma, go on to professional baseball. Kevin Brown with the Orioles is my biggest guy. He was with me in 2010 from Syracuse, and he's now, broadcaster for the Orioles. So it's tough when you're hiring over the phone. I do as much research as I can, but sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So that's what I do.
Steve Tahsler, what do you see as the role of the broadcaster on a team?
I see two roles. From the fan standpoint, the broadcaster is a storyteller. I mean, as I would scrutinize tapes and as resumes would come in years and years ago, that's what I would look for. I pretend, am I willing to have a conversation with this person for 2.5 to 3 hours? That's what I view the job of the broadcaster from the fan basis. Do you have the insight? Do you have the personality? And do you have the passion to keep me engaged for hours, even though it's a one-sided conversation? From the team role, you're a team employee. So how do you help the team? Everybody in minor league baseball, ultimately it comes down to we have to generate revenue. Whether you're the food and beverage person, whether you're the stadium operations person, whether you're the director of group sales, whether you're the marketing person, whether you're the general manager. How does the broadcaster help us generate revenue? Realizing at our level, again, you're not a neutral third party reporting for an outside outlet. You're a team employee. How do you tell the story? How do you engage the fan base? And now that it's done so much digitally and through the social media platforms where you actually can have those one-on-one interactions while you're on the air, how do you demonstrate that the team wants your support, the team appreciates you, and to get you to come out and do more than just listen to or more than watch the game, to actually have involvement in the club? So I'm looking for somebody that can convey that marketing message and convey the message that not only is it a great game to watch online or to listen to, but you need to come out and be at the ballpark to experience it. And here's how you can do so.
John Nolan, you hire number two broadcasters. You've been hiring number two broadcasters for years, although you don't currently have an opening. So we're not speaking realistic. We're talking about the number twos that you've hired in the past. What do you look for?
Yeah, so obviously the ability to broadcast at a quality level kind of goes without saying here, and having some experience, whether that's just while in college at the campus radio or TV stations or digital experiences or past internships. Yes, I had interned with a team in the Cape Cod Baseball League, the Falmouth Commodores, in between the summers of my sophomore and junior years. And then for the summer between my junior and senior year, as a student at Syracuse, I was able to have an internship with the AAA team that's there. So looking back on it now, really struck gold in terms of the window of timing as far as people to learn from. A couple of names mentioned on this call. Jason Benetti at the time was the lead voice for then the Syracuse Chiefs, and Kevin Brown was their number two broadcaster. So trying to soak up learning from them. So in terms of what I'm looking for, yeah, so quality, experience. That said, I guess there would be kind of intangibles too, something for those of you on the call here to consider, because the broadcast assistant here, it's a real partnership. And so sometimes working in literally tight quarters, so whether that's a small broadcast booth or sharing a hotel room on the road, and then not to mention just being on air with someone. So, do you have a personality that frankly, that I can get along with? Do you have sort of a work ethic in which you are willing to do more than just broadcast? Because hopefully everyone here on this call already has a sense for this. And Jesse, I know one thing we had talked about offline before was preparing for a game, right? Well, in minor league baseball, I would view getting to call the game, I'd use the analogy of getting to call a game is like dessert. And so as kids, maybe even as adults, young adults, we all want dessert, right? But when I was a kid, my parents would say, I couldn't have dessert until I ate everything else that was on the plate. So even if that was vegetables, which at the time, or maybe still now, I didn't want to have, it's necessary. So in most cases, and out of the 120 MILB broadcast jobs, in addition to the different summer collegiate or independent league teams, everyone's job description is going to be a little bit different. But in the case of Fort Wayne, for me as our media relations manager, I'm responsible for coordinating interviews. So here in Fort Wayne, we are a team that gets pretty significant media coverage from the local newspaper, TV stations, online publications. So during the day, maybe ideally, if you're the broadcaster for the San Diego Padres, you're arriving to the ballpark middle of the afternoon, and you can probably just sit down in the booth and start filling out your scorebook and really just lock in on the game. But in a case of a minor league broadcaster, you might have to be trying to coordinate with a player's schedule to set up the time for them to speak with a journalist who's looking to interview them. If we have Taylor Swift night coming up, we might have our video production department looking to record videos with players to be on the video board and for social media content that night. So I'm coordinating with our team to, get guys to do some sing-along karaoke. Sometimes there's different events going on at the ballpark, and it's all hands on deck to be able to set up or break down, or, the classic, helping out with the tarp. A lot of different things that are going on, game notes, et cetera. The major league, someone specifically just working on the media relations side and now dealing with broadcasting too. So suffice to say, you're being pulled in a lot of different directions, and hopefully there's still some time to set aside to make sure that you're prepared for the game as well. But again, that's kind of the dessert, and so you got to do everything else first. So I think that's an important thing just to understand, is that when you go into minor league baseball, you're going to have different responsibilities. So whether that's, again, here in Fort Wayne, I'm responsible for managing our website, and over the years have led the way on our social media accounts as well. I think everyone probably, if you're serious enough about getting into this industry or on the call, this probably isn't breaking news, but you're going to have more job responsibilities. In some cases, it might be sales, but you got to embrace that stuff. And then the payoff is getting to call the game at the end of the day or end of the night. So I think just making sure that you have the mentality, because perhaps some people are really locked in on wanting to call the game. And while, it's terrific, at the same time, it's not really going to work out for you in most instances in minor league baseball if you don't have the kind of attitude of looking to add value to the organization in other aspects as well.
We open the floor. And for everyone who is asking questions, here's the one specific detail I would like to ask of you. Be direct and help us out in terms of directing traffic to our panel. And you can just say someone's name or say, this question is for these two panelists. And that way we have clarity. Cal Friedman.
Thank you, Jesse. This question goes for everybody, but specifically I'd like to ask John and Steve this. I'm somebody that always preps very hard for my broadcasts. When I'm on an interview, how do I showcase that to my hiring boss?
Let's begin with Steve.
The best analysis I had was from a former broadcaster of who worked for me. He's now the sports information director at Temple University. And he said the purpose of an interview is not to show how smart you are, it's to demonstrate the interview, to let the interviewee show how smart he or she is. And I think that's the way to do it. As you do your prep work, it's to how do you put whoever that is on the air with you in the best possible light. It's not about yourself, it's about your guest. And what research, what background can you do to make that person come across as knowledgeable and as competent as possible, even if they may struggle or they may not be used to the microphone, they may stammer a little bit. You have to coach them through. The ultimate purpose of the interview is not you. The ultimate purpose of the interview is your guest. And as I started to listen to more interviews, I picked up on that the really good broadcasters let the person tell the story and coach that guest to tell the story as well as possible.
John, what do you have to add?
Yeah, so Cal, you were asking how do you let your prep for broadcast shine in more of an interview setting? Yeah, so I mean, for one, I guess you'd want that prep that you put into your broadcast to shine in whatever kind of stretch demo you're sharing. And again, going back to something I think Pete said, definitely having in mind storytelling. So hopefully you'd be able to showcase a good story that you were able to tell. That would be an example of your prep. And then, I mean, I guess I would say, the prep that you put into a broadcast, hopefully you're doing that same kind of prep towards the organization that you're interviewing with. Not to throw people under the bus, but over the years, it's been surprising to see how many people will send an email reaching out to a team like the TinCaps, in which they either look, and I understand you're trying to cast a wide net and reach out to as many teams as possible, but I kind of roll my eyes when we get an email and sometimes they come to me, sometimes they go right to Mike, but if they're just copying and pasting what they send everybody else. So it says like, dear to whom this may concern. Well, right there, somebody is showing me that they're not taking the time, the 5 to 10 seconds to, directly address who they're reaching out to, whether it's the team's broadcaster, or if there's an opening to someone in the leadership for the organization. I mean, we've had people reach out to Fort Wayne saying, I really want to express my interest in this opening for the Dayton Dragons. Well, this is a job that requires you to be detail oriented. So if you're swinging and missing at something that easy, I honestly just don't have any faith that you're going to be able to execute the job going forward. Again, maybe you take the small step of addressing someone directly, having the name of the team right, but then you don't necessarily do your homework on the organization. So I'd say, a question maybe I'd be asking someone would be like, what do you know about the team? And so from that, yeah, not looking for you to recite, the top 10 franchise history, most home runs hit, but, are you aware of, we'll just use Fort Wayne here as a specific example, the fact that our ballpark is downtown and there's a growing community around the team. Do you know that our team president, Mike Nutter, has been here for more than 20 years? And so there's a lot of consistency and continuity in the organization. Little things like that, I think, can set you apart. Even something as simple as, if you're able to know some kind of history of the team, whether it's some kind of connection to a player or just to the city in general, a little thing like that can help to make you stand out.
Jacob.
Thank you, Jesse. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacob Munch. Steve, this is in particular for you. As the commissioner of an entire league, how important is it to you for your teams to have their broadcasters travel for road games? Is that something you found that's very valuable to your fans, to the programs?
I've always thought as a general manager that an essential part of professional baseball is having the broadcaster on the road. Not just to tell the story during the 3 hours of the broadcast, but to gather the background information to allow you to tell the story. You have more one-on-one time with the ball players. You have more downtime then. It's shifting so much now, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, with the technology where you can do completely remote broadcasts. You can have the home voice. You could have the team voice sitting at the ballpark or even sitting in an apartment and still do a broadcast that makes it look like it's on site. Now, the difference is you don't have those connections. You can't get the interviews. You can't get the extra nuggets. That's kind of one concern I'm having. I know, the Visual Group, who is big in video production and, in-game entertainment, they now offer a service where they will have their broadcaster their generic broadcaster act as your team broadcaster from his home in Ohio. And for example, I know the Palm Beach Cardinals will be broadcast by a guy sitting in a desk in Ohio. And, yes, it's a cost savings. The question to me is that a valuable cost savings? Do you want to save money on your product? So on a personal level, I think, yes, having the broadcaster travel makes a much better presentation. You've got, it gets back to the economics. What can the broadcaster do to justify the expense in putting him or herself on the road with the team?
Griffin
Thank
Leonard.
you.
Hey, thanks guys for being here. My name's Griffin Leonard. I'm in the Sports Link program over at Ball State University in Indiana. I just kind of wanted to know, as far as relocation goes, and this goes out to Pete and John specifically, but for anybody who wants to throw in something is welcome to. What advice would you have for a broadcaster who's maybe looking to relocate to a new region, a new area to take a job, or for those who have done it, what challenges did they face and how do they overcome those challenges?
Pete, what do you think?
Was that for me?
Yes, let's start with you. Broadcasters traveling in and the challenge of the relocation and transitioning.
Oh, we try to make it as smooth as possible. Our interns are unpaid. We make them interact with the team. We have host families for our broadcasters, and we give them a car, and we encourage them to get out in the community, see people. We're very community oriented, so we do a lot of things in the community, and the broadcasters are involved with that. Basically, that's it. My wife and I, Denise, we try very hard to make sure everybody has a pleasant experience up here.
John Calavita.
Hey guys, John Calavita, recent graduate of Penn State. I guess I have two questions, both for John and Steve. One's a yes or no, and one's more nuanced. So I would say, does it matter the production quality of your work? Because obviously I'm coming from the Northwoods League, so that quality is super good. And then this coming spring, I'm going to be doing a lot of Division III, Division II, a couple Division I, but mostly broadcast with smaller budget. I would wonder if that broadcast, if you're looking at that type of a reel, if that matters at all, if it's the production. Obviously it's not under your control. I just want to know if that's a thing you guys take into account. And then obviously everybody's cover letter is going to be different. I just want to know if there's specific things that you want to see in a cover letter.
I can answer first here, Jesse. And just a couple of things. Going back to the previous question about relocating. Yeah, so in my case, I'm about 10 hours away from where my family and friends grew up. So I know at this point, obviously, really comfortable in Fort Wayne, thanks to the really starting at the top with Mike Nutter as our team president, and great culture that we have in our organization, and being able to have coworkers who are really friends and close friends at that. But sort of echo what Pete said as well, just being in part of the community. I'll just throw this out there for anyone who might be relocating. I think it's first off, on a small level, since we all spend too much time on our phones and on social media and stuff. One thing I did early on was I followed a bunch of accounts that were Fort Wayne related, because I think sometimes maybe if you could be physically in a different place, but if on social media all you're seeing is wherever you came from, then you're sort of warped to not be where your feet are, so to speak. So whether that's the local news stations and reporters accounts, or just different community organization accounts to follow on social media, that helps you give you a sense of what's going on in the community where you are. And while that's one thing that can be helpful, ultimately you want to be out and about in the community. So whether probably you could be working for a team that's going to have a lot of volunteer opportunities, just literally getting to be out there. I guess, one thing here in Fort Wayne, I am also involved broadcasting wise with the local sports radio station that we're on, sometimes high school sports or sometimes the local Division I school. So again, just getting yourself out there. I mean, one thing again, Mike has done or sort of established here in Fort Wayne was everyone volunteering with multiple nonprofits beyond even a TinCaps capacity. So the stuff like that of being out there in the community. Another to the question in terms of production quality, actually, this might sound counterintuitive, but and now, so I'm 33. When I was a student in college, we didn't have, it was really just audio radio broadcasts. Really didn't have hardly any video broadcast experience. A lot different. I envy, frankly, those of you now, whether you're at a power conference school or you're doing, let's say, Big Ten Student U, which is really network quality, or ACC Network Extra, or the Northwoods League being on ESPN Plus. I actually sometimes worry now, let's say someone coming out of Syracuse who's done ACC Network Extra games where it is basically network quality. I actually sometimes worry that they could go to a minor league team and not be able to adjust to things not being at that top level. Like, it's sort of a skewed reality. And honestly, in Fort Wayne, we are fortunate to have higher end production than certainly average in minor league baseball. So not really speaking specifically to Fort Wayne here in this case, but not everyone's got all the bells and whistles. So I think some guys and girls can struggle to adapt from working on a broadcast where somebody's running every single position and it's all smooth, and all of a sudden you get to a place where you don't have brand new equipment and blanks hitting the fan. Are you able to kind of roll with the punches and adjust like that? So my personal opinion would be that I certainly wouldn't hold it against someone who doesn't have that top level experience. At the same time, I'm not going to dismiss someone just because they've worked a high level before. There's something to that, and being able to be aware of what a high level production is like. But for me, that would not be a prerequisite. And then in terms of a cover letter, and I think someone in the chat was asking about a resume too. Like my wife, for example, works in graphic design, and so I'll just say like a regular kind of job where if you need to have a resume and cover letter and stuff when you're applying for jobs. It can be a necessary thing when you're applying for a job in broadcasting, but let's be honest, like ultimately how you sound is going to outweigh what you write in a cover letter. I think hopefully in a cover letter, you can try to make it not so generic and try to, going back to what I was talking about before, make it something in which, you have some kind of hook, some kind of tie in to make yourself stand out, to make it look like you took the time to address it to the specific team that you're applying for, or sharing your own. We're talking about storytelling broadcast wise, share your own story, something that might make you stand out from others. But I wouldn't sweat too much the layout of your PDF that you're sending, whether it's the resume or the cover letter.
Mike Nutter, let's get you back involved, because I did want to ask you a couple of the questions in the chat. For example, what are things that you see in winning resumes that stand out amongst the rest of the applications? And Emma Tiedemann had asked me the question about the non-broadcast responsibilities, what other skills should be honed. Let's start with resume and other things that a broadcaster should focus on, Mike.
Yeah, I want to just see that I don't mean to minimize it, but that you've done something. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like sometimes when the young men and women in this regard can fall a little short, at least for what my eyes are looking for, is you're a junior in college and you haven't called anything yet. Not trying to be disrespectful, but you've got all those times in the summers to invest in yourself. And yeah, maybe you can make more money working at this other thing or something like that. But if it's your dream and desire to work for a professional sports team, whatever sport that is, wherever in the country, get going on it and show me that you're serious about it. And like John said before, some of the production stuff coming out now, my kids are both in college down at IU Bloomington, but the high school that they went through, they weren't in broadcasting, but the stuff's better than anything that I'd seen even on some regional sports networks. And so you guys have such, and gals have such an opportunity to call stuff everywhere. Absolutely. Just start building that resume. I don't look down on that it was my high school team, that it was this, that it was somebody that asked a good question before, that it's D3, or that it shows me that you're hungry and you're wanting to build your resume and getting your portfolio put together. So when it's time to take that next jump, you've got a considerable amount of hours in the industry.
Connor Young.
Thanks for being here, guys. This is great. I really appreciate you trying to help out some of us younger broadcasters. Yeah, I have a question, I guess, for probably Jesse and John. Demo reels is obviously, we've talked about it a lot already. You guys have hit on it. That's like one of the biggest things when it comes to your applications. What are some demo reel no-nos that you've seen a lot? Some common mistakes, whether it's like in the first 5 minutes. I know that's super important to try to grab the attention of whoever's watching it right away. What are some things that kind of turn you off right away when it comes to a demo reel?
John, I'll go first with two quick things, and then I'll turn it to you. My two quick things are, number one, a different sport. If I'm hiring you for baseball, I really don't need to hear how awesome you sound on basketball or soccer or football or volleyball. Just give me baseball. And that's what I'm going to evaluate you on. And the second thing is really bad audio, that when it goes on, it's difficult to listen to, and I struggle to hear how your voice sounds. The better the audio, the better I have an understanding of how you sound. John?
And yeah, hopeful. I think everyone here is probably savvy enough to understand this already. But for better or worse, probably worse, this is like the most subjective industry possible, right? So I'm giving my own experiences and my own opinions in some cases. Same for Jesse. Again, you and the executives on here, but you could pull everyone throughout minor league baseball, MLB, other leagues, et cetera. Everyone's probably going to have some nuance to their responses. And I would say if you're applying for a job in baseball and they're looking for a tape, then as Jesse says, make sure you're supplying, baseball highlights. That said, to be honest, I have at times heard someone call another sport, and to me, that's given me enough of an understanding that they know what they're doing just in general as a broadcaster, and it can translate even if they don't have quite as much experience on baseball. So I'm not saying like submit your basketball tape when applying for a baseball job, but if you do have maybe a all sports highlight reel, for me too, that it's not that wouldn't ban you from consideration, because I think there are just certain principles. Again, Jesse wrote this in the chat. A key thing is just how you sound. Again, 100% subjective, but if I like how you sound describing a touchdown, probably a pretty good chance I'll like how you sound when I hear you call a home run too. So I obviously have some baseball in there, but I wouldn't rule it out. So then, yeah, I would also reiterate what Jesse said, the quality, while, we're saying doesn't have to be big league level production, at the same time, if, again, just simply the sound, because someone listening to this is a human. And so if it sounds bad in terms of being over modulated, which would be, a shame sometimes that's out of your control, but within reason, if it is at some point, really unlistenable, that's going to be, probably held against you to some point, or just not be helping your cause. So yeah, I wish I had the answers. If I had a perfect answer, then I'd probably be in a different spot than on the Zoom call with everyone here right now. And if you find out, the magic recipe to get a job at the highest of levels, I'm all ears for it too. I think, again, just you could ask a million people and you get kind of a million different responses, but a lot of it is probably pretty common sense thinking. Just put yourself in the position of the person you're sending it to and think like, does this and if you have to ask the question like, does this sound okay, then maybe it's kind of the answer right there.
We'll go back to the raised hands in a moment. A question from the chat for you, Steve Tahsler, from Reggie Singleton. How much does experience matter in the hiring process? Would you select one person over another depending on how much they have on their resume?
Experience is huge, I think. And the more varied types of experience you get, the better it's going to be because it shows you've gone through the system and you understand really what goes into it. The concept that, the broadcast is dessert is very similar to what we tell our teams all along. The ball game is the easiest part of what we do, and it's the fun part of what we do. It's everything that takes place leading up to that ball game starting that's the hard work. So I think the more experience you can get in the more different areas you can get that experience in the more different locations. It's great if you're working at a college athletic department, but if you can do high school, if you can do tournaments when they come in, if you can do summer collegiate ball, if you can, do PA work or anything else, the more varied you can make yourself, the easier it's going to be for us to hire you and the more attractive you're going to be because we see you've got that flexibility. And I guess the other piece is our teams get flooded with resumes from broadcasters. When you look at the number of broadcaster openings and compared to the number of player openings and the fact that broadcasters don't have a cap on their career like athletes do, it's very tough to get into. The most important thing we do when we're looking to hire a broadcaster is personal references. Who do we know that has worked with you that can vouch for you? That generally, just to be real blunt, that's the first thing we do when we sort it out. When we have an opening, we reach out to our contacts. We reach out to people that we trust and say, who have you worked with before that you can recommend for this role? Because we don't have the time to dig through 100 or 200 resumes to sort through audio clips and listen to that. We're going to go with someone we know. So along those lines, the more people you network with, the more people you introduce yourselves to, the more people who see you work, that's going to be the biggest thing in terms of how do you get that next job.
Tom Hill, thank you for your patience.
Hi, thank you guys. And thank you for putting this together, Jesse. This was just a really great tool for us. And my question is mainly directed at, John, Mike, and Steve, and even you, Jesse. But John, you actually answered my question I had a couple of minutes ago about, just the importance of the resume and the cover letter as it relates to the demo reel. So I'm going to just try to shift back to the demo reel. The things that you guys are looking for in a demo, is it, in terms of length, is it a minute and a half? Is it about 3 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? And then also, two-pronged question here would be the content. Do you want to see a home run, but also a strikeout? Do you want to see, pitcher highlights and hitter highlights? Do you want to see a rundown? Do you want to see, a sacrifice fly or a double in the gap? What are kind of the content related things that you would like to see?
Pete Christopher, I'm actually going to turn to you. When you put on a demo and you listen to it, what are you looking for?
Well, like Steve said, I want baseball. I don't want another sport. I'm looking for the quality of the voice. Like I said, I'm hiring sight unseen because no one's going to fly 4,500 miles from the East Coast up to Alaska to interview for a job. How they call plays, if it's keeping my attention. Basically, if it's addressed to me and not like somebody said to whom it may concern, that's important to me.
Thank you, Pete. Tom, let me add in too that the general rule of thumb I've always heard for a half inning is 7 to 10 minutes. That 3 or 4 is too short, but please don't go past 10. And in general, we're going to listen to 3 seconds, right? We're going to see how you sound, and maybe we'll listen to a little bit longer if we want to hear how this sounds, or how does this half inning, or let me hear a home run. But don't give us 20 minutes and don't give us 40 seconds.
Yeah, and I would just throw in that, again, honestly, I don't start with listening to everyone's tapes. I do have more of an emphasis on who's coming in, well recommended based off references. That's going to carry more weight for me. That narrows it down before going through the process of being able to to listen to everyone.
Carson Trail.
Hey, all. Thanks very much, Jesse and Emma, for getting this set up and for all of you for taking the time. My question is for John, Mike, and Pete. What strategies have you seen broadcasters use to market themselves? And do any come to mind that have been more successful? Thank you.
Hmm.
Works for Jesse. I can go there if it works for you.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think Carson, I think it's a great question. We talked before, somebody said, what if I get 100, 200? You can't listen to all that stuff. But as cliche as it is, the question is like, what are you doing to distinguish yourself from somebody else, Carson, and everybody else on here? And so we've had people that have shown up. We've had people that didn't get the job from us, and John told them that and asked, hey, I'm doing this college wood bat league. Would it be cool if I came by your ballpark? We have a day off. I'd love to meet you guys in person, after maybe it didn't go their way. And a lot of what John Nolan said is, who do you know that we know? Well, there's no better way. You come walking in our ballpark. Again, we're not 4,500 miles away like Pete is, but like if somebody's in the Midwest or something like that and you show us, you'll drive 45 minutes out of the way and you're doing a game down in the Lafayette Aviators in that league or something like that. It shows us that you're willing to, hey, get up in that hotel that you're in at 8 o'clock in the morning, drive over here and we'll give you a half hour or an hour just to get to know you and show you around. It shows me that you're serious and you're willing to distinguish yourself from just the masses that send an email or something or a link and don't even ever follow up.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that sentiment. And in terms of like the personal branding, which kind of makes me nauseous to talk about, but it obviously is like a reality of whatever you're doing these days, especially in broadcasting. So I do think it is beneficial at this point if you can have a personal website, and even if it's through like a free service, so you're maybe not paying as much for the unique URL, but I think it is helpful to have your own personal website where you can have that as a hub for everything we're talking about here, whether it's different reels, resume, etc. Because yeah, again, just think about things logically here. We all have a lot going on and stuff. And so if somebody's sending, 4 different links and multiple different attachments and stuff, it's just not as easy to track as if someone's got it all centrally located.
Speaking about a lot going on, I know that we have a deadline of 1:30 for our panelists. So here we go. Zach Berman.
Jesse, thank you for putting this together. John, I knew your face from somewhere. I didn't realize you walked out at your wedding to the Edwin Diaz song. That was amazing. My question to sum it up for Jesse and John is, I graduated from Mizzou summer of 23, broadcast in the Cape League, broadcasted Indy ball, currently doing a lot of freelance D1, D3 Philly area. But I guess for a few different circumstances, I haven't necessarily been able to break in the way that you plan to when you go all out to become a broadcaster. So in the meantime, I have a huge social following running a certain account that may or may not be Barstool's entire SEC brand, as well as I just left a sales position with the New Jersey Devils for the last year. How would you recommend, in addition to my broadcast acumen, selling yourself on your own versatility? Because I know that I don't necessarily have a lot of recent experience in the booth, or as much as I would necessarily want. But how do you sell yourself, I guess, to you guys talk so much about what are you willing to do? How do I sell myself as being as well-rounded as possible without, say, taking away from what I'm truly trying to accomplish?
John, let me answer this quick in terms of not answering it, encountering something totally different, but I think that's important. And that is, I think that if you're looking for a job in minor league baseball, the best thing to do is to treat yourself like a reporter and you're looking for sources and get sources in terms of fellow broadcasters in every single league, in any league that you want to work, where you've got a good relationship. And this is a broadcaster who you trust each other, they trust you, and they believe in you to the point where that source within that league will let you know if there's an opening and will give you the scouting report and say, this is a job that you should apply for, this is a job that you shouldn't. Those relationships, that's going to put you in position. As far as selling yourself goes, the team wants to know how you'll benefit them, right? As we heard from Steve, as we heard from Pete, as we heard from Mike, what can you do? John has talked about all the things that he does. But first, get those sources within each league who you can rely on. And that puts you in position to say, oh, with this team, here's what they prioritize. Because teams prioritize different things out of their broadcasters. And that puts you into more of a position to go individually, oh, this is what this team is looking for. And they suddenly have an opening out of nowhere. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you like a real world example. I know I was the runner up for a position where they decided to go with the guy who had more followers on TikTok. So like that might be something that depending on the spot, you can leverage that acumen that you have there in content creation and on social media. And obviously, again, there's plenty of teams that are going to want someone to help with sales. So I think, sorry, it's not a more it's still a challenging thing to answer, but depending on the spot, there's definitely going to be teams that would be, super receptive to what you're able to offer there.
Mike Nutter, you wanted to jump in.
I'll make it quick. Zach, I would embrace the experience that you may or may not have with that Barstool account. And so my point is, I'm 52. This is all I've ever done, but everybody in here at the generation below me is way better and way more pronounced and successful in the social media stuff. So many minor league teams over the last, let's call it 5 years, have brought in full-time people in that regard. It doesn't mean that you're taking a back seat with the broadcasting, but let me know, let Pete know, let the Frontier League know, like let us know that in addition to being the broadcaster, I embrace the idea of doing sales. I'll get out and do every community speech that you want me to do for every Rotary Club and everything on the rubber chicken circuit. And hey, by the way, I have this experience with a following on social media where it's like, maybe Zach can wear 2 or 3 different hats as opposed to just the one. Then hone your craft, and the broadcasting is going to take you as far as it'll take you.
Jesse, really quick, just before we had someone who was full-time dedicated to content social media here in Fort Wayne when I was the lead person on it. Yeah, there was one year where for the number 2 broadcaster, I took someone who probably wasn't the strongest play-by-play candidate, but someone who wanted to jump in more on the content creation stuff. So again, it's going to kind of vary by a team's needs. And again, I'm not suggesting that you move maybe halfway across the country to just be on someone's video production staff. What you want to do is really on air play by play. But again, one time somebody here who was in the region was able to be in a game day role, and then all of a sudden we got to know them, and it put them kind of front of the line for future hiring.
Apologies, since we're
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, we're closing in on 1:30, so let's do one more question and then we can follow up. Now that you've got, and there's the question in the chat, what are your email addresses so we can further send along clips? John shared his. This is getting those relationships started, and I hope that you've been able to take some info, some wisdom from what you've heard. Daniel, wrap us up.
Thank you, Jesse. So my quick question that I have before we get going is, so I've done some work in high school and starting to get myself out there, things like that. But I graduate this year and I'm heading into college. I've connected with my school a little bit in terms of doing play-by-play and things with media, but working with like professional clubs while in college, what would be the best way to approach that?
Steve, let's start with you. What do you think?
Send out. Go ahead. Send out a resume, just like we've been talking about. Same type, just the information that will grab the guy you're applying to.
Steve Tahsler.
I would say if you're just coming out of high school and you've got the ability to work for a team beyond your school, take any role you can get. even if it's taking tickets, working at the concession stands, running a camera. If you've got that skill set, just get in their system. You're going to have a few years to get people to know you, and hiring internally, internal promotion is the easiest thing for a team to do. If they've got someone on staff as a game day worker that they're getting to know and getting to see their work ethic, that person will immediately be at the top anytime a new role comes. So even if it's not a pure broadcasting role, just get into the system as young as you are and demonstrate your work ethic. And the more you demonstrate your work ethic and your versatility, that's going to make it easier for you to climb.
Steve, thank you very much. Steve Tahsler, the commissioner of the Frontier League. Pete Christopher, the general manager of the Matsu Miners. John Nolan, the broadcasting and media relations manager of the Fort Wayne TinCaps. And Mike Nutter, the team president of the Fort Wayne TinCaps, joining us here today. And all of you, thank you very much for your questions. Thank you for joining. Hopefully this helped. And I'll send out the link because I've recorded this as a video and you can go back and consult it. But I appreciate everybody for taking of their valuable time here today. And here's wishing you a terrific rest of the day from very frigid Lansing, Michigan.
Thanks a lot, Jesse. And a last thing I'll just throw out there. This is a really, really hard industry. So I'm not to try to scare anyone off or anything, but it's really tough. So don't make it your entire identity, because whether or not somebody asked in the chat before about, timing and fortune, that's a huge thing. And I think most broadcasters at the highest level would acknowledge it. So the sounds cliche from what, we hear athletes, coaches talk about, but control what you can control. And hopefully things work out. But if you work hard, you treat people the other way, whether or not it's going to pay off for you in broadcasting or pay off for you in other facets of life, I think ultimately that's still going to be most valuable. So keep going, don't give up, and hope we can help.